Brett Baier has a new book out. It's called 3 Days in Moscow, Ronald Reagan and the Fall of the Soviet Empire. Brett, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You know, we're looking at what's going on with this president. Of course, things were done a little differently back then than they are now. But here we are looking at something that's Reagan-like. What happened with the fall of the Soviet Empire? And that's what your book is about.
It is. And, you know, the last word in the book, I talk about President Trump and the moment we're in now. There are a lot of similarities. Obviously, they're two different personalities. But both of these presidents essentially had a paradigm shift when they came in. Big moments that they were underestimated when they came in. And so far, there have been some big speeches that President Trump has delivered that sounded a lot like Reagan.
Yeah.
He deals with people differently, and he's more of a counterpuncher. But you have this big negotiation on June 12th in North Korea that, trust but verify is going to factor in, and the ability to get up from the table if the deal's not right.
How were we able to, and you know, we had the Cold War that we all grew up with, and the fear of the Soviet Union. How did Ronald Reagan accomplish this, and the time that he had? Obviously, you take from previous administrations, but he was the guy that did it and got it done.
Yeah, so I used this format, which I used in the last book, 3 Days in January, Dwight Eisenhower's Final Mission. And it's the 3 days in that book of the last 3 days of the Eisenhower administration. And I use that and the farewell address to bounce back to show how Eisenhower gets there. Well, that format is here. We use the 3 days in the Moscow summit, the last of 4 summits with Reagan and Gorbachev. He's in the Soviet Union, speaking to Moscow State University students in a speech that's largely overlooked at the time. And use the details of that 3 days to bounce back and show how Reagan gets to that moment. One of the biggest things is he was fighting communism all the way through, even as the president of the Screen Actors Guild of the anti-communist days in Hollywood. And he used that ideological stand firm and the speeches he gave, calling communism, it was going to be on the ash heap of history, saying the Soviet Union was going to be the evil empire. Because he was that firm, it enabled him to jump at the moment when he saw Mikhail Gorbachev as someone he could negotiate with.
And that you just cannot overlook the similarities in what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, it's really astonishing. You know, the big moment, tear down this wall at the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin. No one wanted Reagan to say that. Everybody advised against it, said it was, too much. It was too aggressive, inflammatory. It would screw up negotiations. They begged, they pleaded. Reagan, as he's driving to the speech, turns to an aide and says, "The boys at State are going to kill me, but it's the right thing to do." And he says it anyway. Well, I mean, think of all the things that President Trump has been advised not to say or tweet about Rocket Man and the size of your button. I mean, it's a different time, obviously. But here we are. June 12th is this summit in Singapore. It just so happens that June 12th, 1987, is when Reagan delivers Tear Down This Wall speech.
Wow.
The Brandenburg Gate.
And Brett, we're talking with Brett Baier from Fox News. I have to ask you, how lucky are you? Because let's
tremendous.
Come on.
To be at this seat and covering history.
Think about it. If this very time and you're releasing the book and you're a part, I mean, the timing could not be any better.
Yeah, I didn't have anything to do with it. It just kind of fell into place. But literally, I wrote the last word, the last chapter, a few months ago. I didn't know all of this was going to come together and come to pass, but I wrote about it, saying, if you look at the similarities, they're really stark, and we just have to realize in the moment when history is happening. Because what these books do is look back to an overlooked moment to hopefully illuminate, the past. We can always learn from the past, and that's why I really love this. It's reporting on history almost. Looking back for nuggets. I interviewed George Shultz, former Secretary of State, 93 years old. He remembers meetings like they were yesterday.
Imagine to be a fly on the wall, which you kind of were able to do by interviewing people. You kind of were able to get that behind the scenes. Did they know what they were accomplishing here? And because clearly, when you go in, when he says tear down that wall, no one knows if he's going to be successful.
Right. Reagan had the forethought to truly believe in his gut that communism could not work in the long term, and that was what was kind of driving him and everything he said about it. Now, in each one of these summits, he walks away from the table, and they're seen, some of them, as major failures. Reykjavik is seen as, written up as just a disaster in diplomacy. But it was laying the groundwork for what eventually came. And he signs the only walkback of nuclear weapons, a whole class of nuclear weapons, intermediate nuclear missiles, banned from the Soviet Union and the U.S.
It is kind of troublesome, though, to think about Putin, who seems to want to go back to and really reverse what was done.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And Putin, the amazing part is Putin is in this book. Reagan and Gorbachev walk in Red Square, and they have this iconic moment, the picture where you see, Reagan in Red Square with Gorbachev. The people around there are supposed to be civilians in Soviet Union. But one of them, and all of them, were KGB officers.
Wow.
And one of them, wearing a camera around his neck, shown in a photograph, is Vladimir Putin.
Boy, isn't that amazing? Wow.
Get out of here.
That is just incredible. Brett Baier, critics, people out there saying, here's one, an instant classic, if not the finest book to date on Ronald Reagan. That's a pretty good review.
Yeah, I've had some really great blurbs from historians, Douglas Brinkley, Jay Winnick, Michael Beschloss. Really great stuff. It's on the back of the book. If you look at it, it goes on sale tomorrow, but you can go to 3daysinmoscow.com, and all the booksellers are there, and you can pre-order it. At the same time, a Young Readers Edition for kids is coming out. So it's the exact same book, but in Young Readers form.
Right.
So your 4th, 5th, 6th grader could read it as well.
Very interesting and great speaking to. We really appreciate it. Brett Baier from Fox News. The book, again, is 3 Days in Moscow, Ronald Reagan and the Fall of the Soviet Empire. It is out tomorrow. Thanks so much for taking the time, Brett.